The late afternoon sun dipped low, casting golden streaks across the bedroom as I swept a cloth over the dresser, lost in the rhythm of routine. Dust motes danced in the air, and the house hummed with stillness, until a faint creak shattered the silence. My breath caught as I spun around, clutching something I just fished out from a forgotten drawer. There, framed in the doorway like a shadow come to life, stood Rowan, my 23-year-old stepson, his sharp hazel eyes glinting with something unreadable. In my hands was no ordinary trinket, but a bold, garish toy, its vibrant colors screaming secrets no amount of dusting could erase. My heart slammed against my ribs, and the thing slipped from my grip, thudding to the floor like a guilty confession. Rowan's lips twitched, a flicker of amusement breaking across his angular face as he tilted his head. "What's that?" His voice slid through the air, smooth as velvet, laced with a curiosity that felt like a dare. Heat surged to my cheeks, a wildfire I couldn't douse, and I scrambled for anything, a lie, an excuse, but words tangled in my throat. "It's nothing," I stammered, snatching a pillow from the bed to smother the evidence, as if that could bury the moment too. But Rowan didn't flinch. He leaned against the doorframe, all lanky confidence, his dark hair falling just enough to shadow those piercing eyes. He wasn't supposed to be here, not yet. He worked late at that brewery down the street, always drifting in with the scent of hops and midnight laughter. So why now? Why this? "Don't tell me it's some heirloom," he teased, his tone dancing on the edge of mockery and intrigue, like he'd caught me in a game I didn't know I was playing. My pulse raced faster, embarrassment warring with something sharper, something I couldn't name. "Rowan, get out," I snapped, my voice cracking like thin ice, but he didn't budge. His gaze lingered, steady and unrelenting, peeling back layers I'd kept hidden even from myself. The air thickened, charged with a tension I couldn't shake, and I wondered, did he see the toy, or did he see me? The question hung there, unspoken, as the room seemed to shrink around us, daring me to find out. The bedroom felt smaller now, the walls pressing in as Rowan's voice cut through the haze of my embarrassment. "You don't have to act so shy about it," he said, his tone low and steady, like he was sharing a secret meant just for me. His words weren't sharp or cruel. They carried a weight, a quiet confidence that hinted at a worldliness I hadn't expected from him. At 23, he wasn't a boy anymore, and the way he stood there, arms crossed, head tilted, made that painfully clear. His hazel eyes locked onto mine, no longer teasing but searching, peeling back the flimsy armor I'd thrown up with that ridiculous pillow. My chest tightened. A strange warmth bloomed there, curling low and dangerous, only to crash against a wave of guilt that nearly drowned it. He was my stepson, for God's sake. What was I doing, letting his gaze unravel me like this? The air buzzed, thick with something I couldn't name, and Rowan stepped closer, not much, just enough to make the space between us feel alive. "I've seen worse," he added, a smirk tugging at his lips, casual as if we were talking about the weather. But his eyes didn't match the lightness of his words. They lingered too long, too deep, like he was seeing past the flustered woman clutching a pillow and into something raw, something I hadn't dared look at myself. My skin prickled, caught between wanting to bolt and wanting to know what he saw. The warmth in my chest flickered again, a traitor to the voice screaming in my head that this was wrong. Wrong to feel anything at all under that steady, unblinking stare. I couldn't take it anymore. The guilt clawed its way up, sharp and relentless, a reminder of who I was supposed to be, his stepmother, married to his father, not some fool trembling under a young man's gaze. "Rowan, please," I managed, my voice a shaky thread as I pointed toward the door. "Just go." For a heartbeat, he didn't move, and the silence stretched taut, heavy with unspoken things. Then he shrugged, a lazy roll of his shoulders, as if none of this rattled him the way it did me. "All right," he said, his tone light again, almost playful, But as he turned to leave, he cast one last look over his shoulder. It wasn't the smirk, the teasing glint I'd braced for. It was something softer, something that pierced deeper, leaving a crack in the walls I'd built around myself. The door clicked shut behind him, and I sank onto the bed, the pillow still crushed against me, my breath uneven. That look, it lingered like a ghost, whispering questions I wasn't ready to answer, promising this wasn't the end of whatever had just begun. The door swung shut with a soft thud as Rowan slipped out, leaving me alone in the bedroom's dim glow. I collapsed onto the mattress, the pillow still crushed against my chest like a shield, though it did nothing to quiet the chaos swirling in my mind. My eyes darted to the floor where that ridiculous toy lay, a splash of neon against the muted carpet, a secret I'd never meant to unearth. I should have picked it up, stuffed it back into the drawer, and buried this whole mess with it. But my hands wouldn't move. They trembled instead, caught in the aftershock of his presence. Rowan, my stepson, all sharp edges and quiet confidence, hadn't just walked in and out of this room. He'd left something behind, a thread of himself that tugged at the edges of who I thought he was, unraveling the safe, familiar image I'd clung to. My breath hitched as my thoughts spun wild and reckless, chasing questions I didn't dare voice. What had he seen in me? And why couldn't I shake the weight of it? Evening crept in, draping the house in a hush I tried to fill with busy hands. I scrubbed pots until my knuckles ached, folded towels into perfect squares, and let the hum of routine drown out the echo of his voice. But it was no use. Rowan's smirk flickered in my mind like a flame that wouldn't die. Crooked, knowing, and far too alive. Those hazel eyes, glinting with something I couldn't name, trailed me as I moved through the house. I sank onto the couch beside Henry, my husband, his broad frame slouched comfortably as the TV droned with the clatter of an old western. His fingers traced absent lines on a crossword puzzle, his world a quiet orbit of gardening tools and whittled wood. He didn't see me unraveling beside him, didn't hear the pulse hammering in my ears. I watched him, his silver hair catching the lamplight, and wondered how he could be so close, yet so far from the storm brewing inside me. Rowan's gaze lingered like a phantom, daring me to look closer, at him, at myself. And as Henry's soft snores filled the space, I realized the distraction wasn't working. The night stretched on, heavy with secrets, and I couldn't tell if it was Rowan I couldn't forget, or the restless, untamed thing he'd woken in me, clawing its way to the surface. The evening draped the house in a restless quiet, and I threw myself into the familiar dance of chores, scrubbing counters, folding laundry, anything to outrun the ghost of Rowan's smirk. That crooked grin, those hazel eyes that pierced too deep, they clung to me like smoke, curling through my thoughts, no matter how hard I tried to shake them. I sank onto the couch beside Henry, my husband, his broad shoulders hunched as he flipped through channels, settling on some dusty western. The gunfire crackled through the speakers, but his focus drifted to the crossword in his lap, a pencil tapping absently against the page. Gardening, woodworking, his little rituals, he was lost in them, oblivious to the way my hands fidgeted, to the way Rowan's gaze still burned in my mind. I stared at the TV, unseeing, wondering how Henry could sit there so calm while I unraveled beside him. Later, the house settled into a deeper hush, and I wandered into the kitchen, craving solitude under the flicker of a single bulb. The hardwood creaked behind me, and there was Rowan, barefoot, tousled hair catching the light, a faded t-shirt clinging to his lean frame. "Hey," he said, casual as ever, tugging open the fridge to grab a water bottle. My pulse jumped, but I forced a lightness into my voice. "You're up late." He leaned against the counter, a lazy smile tugging at his lips. "Could say the same about you. Just unwinding. Living here again's weird, you know? Feels like I don't fit." His words softened something in me, a crack in the wall I'd built, and I caught a flicker of vulnerability beneath his easy charm. For a moment, he wasn't just the stepson who'd rattled me. He was a young man adrift, and I felt the pull to steady him. But then he shifted, that teasing glint sparking back to life. "About earlier," he started, voice dipping playfully. "You don't need to be so embarrassed. We're all human, right?" My hand froze on the counter, the memory of that garish toy flooding back, hot and sharp. "Rowan, let's not." I cut in, my tone firm but brittle, desperate to bury it again. He raised his hands in mock surrender, but that smile, damn that smile, twitched wider, and he stepped closer, close enough that I caught the faint scent of his soap. Okay, he murmured, but the air thickened, his presence pressing in, leaving me dizzy. He brushed past me to leave, and I stood there, heart pounding, the kitchen suddenly too small, too warm, too full of him, and the unsettling truth that I wasn't sure I wanted him to stop. The morning sun spilled through the kitchen window, painting the room in soft gold as I cracked eggs into a sizzling pan. The clatter of plates and the hiss of coffee brewing filled the air, a fragile shield against the unease simmering beneath my skin. Henry shuffled in first, his silver hair tousled from sleep, offering a gruff "morning" before settling at the table with his coffee. Then came Rowan, his damp hair catching the light, a warm smile breaking across his face as he slid into his chair. "Smells good, Lena," he said, his voice smooth, and my name on his lips sent a shiver I couldn't explain. I forced a nod, focusing on the toast, but every move he made, the way he reached for the salt, the flicker of his hazel eyes, tightened a knot in my chest. Henry, oblivious, sipped his coffee, his gaze lost in the steam, while Rowan's fingers brushed mine as he passed the butter, a touch so fleeting yet electric it stole my breath. Breakfast passed in a haze of clinking silverware and half-hearted chatter, but the air thrummed with something unspoken. Rowan's glances lingered, steady, unreadable, while Henry rambled about his garden plans, blind to the tension coiling between us. When the meal ended, I stacked the plates, desperate for the sink sanctuary, but Rowan stood too. "I'll help," he said, his tone casual, though his offer felt anything but. Normally, he'd vanish to his room or out the door, so this, him staying, pricked my curiosity, and something deeper. We moved in silence, the clatter of dishes a thin cover for the charge building between us. Then it happened. I reached for a glass just as he did, and our hands collided, warm skin against warm skin. Neither of us pulled away, not right away, and the air crackled. "You're different, Lena," he said, his voice a quiet rumble, barely above the drip of the faucet. I froze, my throat dry. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, his eyes searching mine, deep and unguarded. "You don't act like others your age. You're real. You see people." His words hit like a spark, igniting a warmth I couldn't douse, and for a moment I was caught, lost in the sincerity of his gaze, the closeness of him. My laugh came out shaky, a weak attempt to break the spell as I stepped back. "Well, that's flattering." But he pressed on, serious now. "It's more than that. You listen. You care." My heart raced, his presence a pull I couldn't fight, until Henry's voice boomed from the living room. "Lena, where's my crossword book?" Shattering the moment. Rowan stepped back, a small, knowing smile tugging at his lips. "I'll let you get to him," he said, light again, but as he walked away, the air still hummed, leaving me teetering on the edge of something I couldn't name. The lights buzzed back to life, casting a harsh glow over the living room, and I stumbled back from Rowan, my lips still tingling with the ghost of his kiss. My hands shook as I pressed them to my chest, the whiskey glass forgotten on the table, its amber glow mocking the chaos inside me. His breath came fast, matching mine, but his hazel eyes held steady, too steady, searching my face as if he could see the war raging behind my wide, panicked stare. "This can't happen," I rasped, shaking my head, each word a desperate claw at sanity. "Not again." Rowan didn't flinch, didn't argue. He just stood there, hands loose at his sides, a quiet "I know" slipping from him like a sigh. But that calm, that acceptance, It wasn't surrender. It was a tether, a thread stretched taut between us, and as he turned to leave, the air still hummed with what we'd done, a mark I couldn't erase. Days bled into one another, heavy with silence and stolen glances. I'd catch Rowan's shadow in the hall, feel his gaze brush me across the breakfast table, and every time, my heart leapt, a traitor to the guilt gnawing at my bones. I drowned myself in chores, scrubbing floors until my hands ached, avoiding him like he was a flame I'd already burned myself on. But he wouldn't let it lie. One evening, as I folded laundry in the guest room, he appeared in the doorway, his frame filling the space. "We need to talk, Lena," he said, his voice firm, cutting through the quiet like a blade. I kept my eyes on the towels, folding them tighter, but he stepped closer, shutting the door with a soft click that echoed in my chest. Us, it doesn't feel wrong to me," he said, his words bold, defiant. "Tell me you don't feel it too." My hands stilled, the air thickening as guilt and fear clashed with the pull of his nearness. "Rowan, it is wrong," I snapped, finally meeting his gaze, those damn eyes, blazing with a certainty I envied. "I'm your stepmother, Henry." "Henry doesn't see you," he cut in, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Not like I do, and I can't pretend this isn't real." Tears stung my eyes, and I turned away, his words slicing through my defenses. "You don't get it," I whispered, voice trembling. "If he found out—" "He won't," Rowan said, fierce, but I shook my head, pushing past him, fleeing the room before he could pull me deeper. His plea lingered, raw, unshakable, and as I escaped, I wondered if I was running from him, or from the truth he'd laid bare, one I wasn't strong enough to face. Sleep eluded me that night, the ceiling above a blank canvas for the chaos swirling in my mind. Henry's soft snores rumbled beside me, steady and oblivious, while my thoughts raced. Rowan's voice, the intensity of his presence, the moment that had tipped us both into dangerous emotional terrain. I slipped from bed, the cool floor a shock against my bare feet, and padded into the hallway, hoping the dark would quiet my restless heart. But there he was, Rowan, leaning against his doorframe, a silhouette carved from the dim glow of his room. His eyes found mine, sharp and unyielding, and the air thickened, heavy with silence. My breath caught, pinned by the weight of his gaze, searching, pulling, daring me to step closer. Neither of us moved, the space between us charged with unsaid thoughts. My pulse thundered, the pull of him undeniable, but fear won. I turned, retreating to my room, the door clicking shut like a barrier I wasn't sure I wanted or needed. The next day, the laundry room became my refuge, the hum of the dryer a dull roar against my frayed nerves. I pulled warm towels free, folding them with a rhythm that promised control, until Rowan's voice broke through. "You're always working," he said, light but edged with something deeper, his presence filling the doorway. I didn't turn, clutching a towel like armor. "Someone has to," I replied, voice tight. He chuckled, soft and low, stepping closer. "Don't you ever get tired of it? Always looking after everyone. When's the last time someone asked how you're doing?" His words struck a chord, and I turned to face him, the towel clutched tightly in my hands. "Rowan, this isn't the time," I said, my voice unsteady. "Maybe not," he replied, more gently now, his tone stripped of playfulness. "But I can't help noticing how much you carry, how invisible it must feel sometimes." My throat tightened, I didn't respond. He reached out briefly, his fingers brushing mine, not lingering, not bold, but enough to make the moment real. "You don't have to do it all alone, Lena," he added softly. I stepped back, shaken more by his sincerity than anything else. "I appreciate the thought," I said, my voice quieter. He nodded, understanding, and left without another word. The towel remained in my hands, half folded, and I stood still in the quiet hum of the room, grateful for his concern, but unsure what to do with the weight of it. The days blurred into a fevered haze, each one laced with stolen glances and moments of closeness that set my heart racing. Rowan found ways to linger, helping with dinner, fixing a creaky cabinet, his presence slowly weaving into the rhythm of my routine like a thread I hadn't expected. In quiet corners of the house, our hands would brush as we passed a dish, or I'd feel the nearness of him as he reached for something overhead. It was subtle, electric, a quiet current that hummed beneath the surface of everyday life. But guilt shadowed every spark, a cold weight that pressed harder with each unspoken connection. I'd catch Henry's silhouette in the next room, his shoulders bent over a woodworking project, unaware, and dread would twist in my chest. What if he saw? What if he knew? The fear became constant, turning every creak in the floorboards into a question I didn't want answered. One afternoon, I stood in the kitchen, unpacking groceries with trembling hands, trying to focus on the simple task before me. The air shifted, and then Rowan was there, his presence close behind me, his voice calm and low. "He's at the hardware store. Relax, Lena." I froze, a bag of apples slipping from my grasp. "Rowan, stop!" "Henry could walk in," I said quickly, stepping away to put space between us. My pulse was a wild drumbeat, the tension too much to ignore. "We need to talk," I added, my voice sharper than I meant. His expression shifted, concern and frustration mingling. "About what?" "This, whatever this is," I said, gesturing vaguely. "It's not fair to him." "Fair to him?" Rowan echoed, his voice rising slightly. "What about you? Have you even stopped to think about what you want?" His words hit hard, and I looked away. "What I want doesn't matter," I muttered. "That's not true," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You deserve to be happy, Lena. Really happy." His gaze held mine, steady and sincere, and I had no answer. Just 100 thoughts crashing into each other. I turned back to the counter, gripping its edge, the groceries forgotten. The silence between us said everything we couldn't, and I stood there, wondering how long I could keep holding together a life that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. The dining room buzzed with polite chatter as Henry carved the roast, oblivious as ever, while our neighbors, Clara and her husband, settled across the table. I played the perfect hostess, smiling, passing rolls, refilling wine, but my hands trembled beneath the surface, the weight of Rowan's presence at the far end pressing against me like a hidden current. Clara's sharp eyes, framed by her silver bob, darted my way too often, her smile too tight, too knowing. As the meal wore on, her gaze lingered, peeling back my carefully stitched facade. After dessert, I escaped to the kitchen, stacking plates with forced calm when Clara slipped in behind me. "You've been distracted lately," she said, her voice casual but edged, a needle probing for a wound. I forced a laugh, brushing it off. "Just busy, you know." But she leaned closer, her whisper chilling me. "Does Henry know?" My heart stopped, the plate in my hand nearly slipping. "Know what?" I croaked, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Whatever's going on with you and Rowan, just be careful, Lena. Secrets don't stay buried." She left me there, frozen, the air thick with the threat of exposure, my mind racing with visions of everything unraveling. The next morning, I fled to the garden, yanking weeds with a fury that matched the storm in my chest. The earth stained my hands as I tore at it, until Rowan's shadow fell over me, his voice steady but tinged with unease. "You're avoiding me." I didn't look up, ripping another root free. "I'm protecting us," I said, my voice raw. "Clara knows, Rowan. She knows something." He crouched beside me, his frown deepening, the air between us crackling. "How could she?" "I don't know," I snapped, standing to face him, dirt clinging to my jeans. "But she does, and if she tells Henry—" "She won't," he cut in, his tone fierce, his hand grabbing mine, grounding me with its warmth. "I won't let this blow up, Lena. I'll keep it safe, us safe." His eyes blazed with a promise I wanted to believe, but my pulse hammered with doubt, fear coiling tighter. "You don't get it," I said, voice rising. "You don't know how fast this could destroy everything." He didn't let go, his grip firm, his voice softening. "I won't lose you over this." For a moment I wavered, caught in the intensity of him, the vow, the heat, the pull. but the weight of Clara's words dragged me back. I pulled free, stepping away, the garden a fragile shield against the truth closing in. Rowan watched me unyielding, but my fear whispered louder. How long could we outrun the shadow of suspicion creeping closer with every breath? The laundry room hummed with the dryer's steady drone as I folded towels, the mundane task a fragile attempt at normalcy amid the quiet unease inside me. Rowan stood nearby, handing me a shirt, our arms brushing briefly in the small space. We'd been cautious, or so I'd believed, but something in the air had shifted, his gaze lingering a moment too long, sending a ripple through my composure. Then the front door creaked open, and Henry's voice echoed through the house. Lena? Sudden and grounding. We both straightened quickly, the tension dissolving into practiced calm as I called out, "In here!" Henry appeared in the doorway, his familiar presence filling the room. His eyes passed over us, unreadable, pausing just long enough to stir doubt in my chest. "Dinner ready?" he asked, his tone neutral. "Almost," I replied with a smile that felt tight at the edges. He gave a short nod and walked away, but the weight of his look lingered, planting seeds of worry I couldn't quite shake. And yet, even with that uncertainty, a glance from Rowan, a quiet, steady reassurance, reminded me that nothing had been said. Not yet. Later that day, the atmosphere shifted again when Henry returned home earlier than expected, the sound of his boots striking the floor sending a tremor through the house. He moved with purpose, setting his briefcase down with more force than usual. "Rowan," he called out, voice sharp and direct. Rowan appeared from the hallway, calm as ever, though I caught the brief flicker of alertness in his expression. "Yeah?" he answered, keeping his tone even. Henry's jaw tightened. "We need to talk," he said, already turning down the hall. Rowan followed without protest, and I remained where I stood, heart pounding quietly in my chest. The moments that passed were thick with silence, every second stretching longer than the last. When Henry returned alone, he stood in the kitchen for a long moment, studying me. His gaze was steady, searching, but not accusatory, only heavy with something unspoken. "You and Rowan," he said at last, his voice low, thoughtful. "I know." The words hung in the air between us, unclear but weighted. I met his eyes, but no further explanation came. He turned away, leaving the conversation unfinished, the meaning suspended in uncertainty. I stood there in the quiet, questions swirling, unsure what had truly been seen, or what might come next. The kitchen fell silent as Henry's words, "I know," echoed in my ears, a riddle wrapped in steel. His eyes held mine, unreadable, before he turned and walked away, leaving me stranded in a sea of questions. Did he see the stolen touches, the whispered secrets? Or was it something else, a suspicion yet to take shape? Rowan's footsteps sounded faintly down the hall, a lifeline I couldn't reach. The house creaked under the weight of our unspoken truths, and as night deepened, I stood at the edge of a choice: run from the fire, or let it consume me. What happens next is anyone's guess. If this tangled tale of secrets and shadows hooked you, don't miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay in the loop. Every twist, every turn, delivered straight to you. Join the journey and let's unravel the mystery together.